Welcome to Small Talk, where each week we sit down to discuss the sermon-based small group questions at Wallula Christian Church.
Welcome back to Small Talk, Wallula's weekly podcast. We're so glad that you guys could join us today. I am joined by Craig and Lance. My name is Zach, and we are glad you're here with us. We are going to be looking at Revelation chapter 15 and 16, mainly looking at the 7 bowls, kind of going on with the third set of plagues after the trumpets and the seals. And so we have a lot to unpack, and glad you could do that with us. But today, just like every day, we're going to open up with a fun question. And the question is, if you could have a bowl full of anything right now, what would it be? And have you ever had a bowl or a plate or whatever full of something put in front of you that you wanted to refuse but couldn't? And so what happened from that? I will go first. So I like to think of I don't know, loopholes and things. It's like if I could have a bowl full of anything and I put genies because it's dumb. I was like, I want a bowl full of wishes, please. Bowl full of infinite wishes. And I was like, magic lamps or genies. I don't know. And I was like, if I could put anything in. So I know that's stupid. So I know, but I was like, okay, how could I get a lot out of this?
Right.
Millions of dollars. I know. If I could have a bowl full of anything, I mean, really, you think of bowls, and I just think just cereals. And what's funny is I don't ever eat this one anymore, but Fruity Pebbles is like the one thing I always go back to. Because I used to eat cereal a lot, especially when I was single. And so I had it there's the healthy, eat it as a meal cereal, kind of like something with wheat. Right, some shredded wheat.
Yes.
And then there's desserts, and then there's dessert cereal.
Right.
And the ultimate dessert cereal for me was Fruity Pebbles. It is just it tasted good, and you can get 2.5 good bowls of cereal out of a box. It's tiny, and it fills up a bowl a lot. But when I was in China,
those are big bowls.
Huh?
Yeah, those are big bowls.
Don't judge.
No.
And so fill it up. No, but I remember when I was in China for a summer and I was teaching English, and it was just, we lived on campus and we ate from their cafeteria. So it was healthy food, very, a lot of rice and really good stuff. Very little sugar. And I remember when it was over and we were flying home, I told my parents, I want some cold milk, because we always had warm milk, and I want Fruity Pebbles. Those are I just wanted something sweet and cold milk. And so, they would boil their milk to... So it wouldn't be, Yeah. I don't know if that's everywhere in China. Just at the school we were at, it was always hot milk as a drink. But it was never to be poured over anything. It was just they ate everything hot and
that's terrible.
I mean,
God
they drank.
Bless the USA.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no ice machines. It was hot tea, milk, water, stuff like that.
All right.
But the other part of the question is, have you ever had something you put in front of you that you didn't want? My nemesis from last week would be green beans and peas. I never got it. And my parents would try, and I remember, I think I was second grade. The green beans on the plate, you can't leave until you eat them. And I just sat there, and they left, and they're like, "You're not leaving. You're not going to you can't watch your bedtime show." And I was like, I just sat. And then how did it end? I went to bed. There was nothing. I lasted longer than them. I didn't get to do anything fun, and that was still better than having to eat those green beans. There was one other time with green peas. They said you have to eat them, and the pressure was on, and I was like, oh, I don't want to. It smells gross. I was smelling it and gagging. And then I forced myself to eat one because I thought I was going to be in trouble, and then threw up right then. Just threw it all up. And so...
Really?
Wow.
Yep. And so ever since then, now I've gotten to the point where I can eat it, I can fake it if I'm in public and I get served at someone's house, which never happens, but I can eat it and be And in my mind, I'm like, chew slowly. It's okay. You'll get through this. In front of everyone, it looks like I'm just, eating vegetables like a normal adult. But in my mind, I'm like, just deep breaths, breathe through your nose, you're fine. And so, anyway, so that's what happened with my green beans and peas.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like we needed samples here to watch.
Of what?
We'll just try to
Green
eat a
beans,
green
peas?
bean.
Oh.
See if you can really
Well,
fool us.
if it's in a stew, no
But,
problem. I can eat it, but like just
Okay.
pure, especially peas.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just can't. Like even now, I'm like,
I think
It-
peas are great.
it would be hard. Pea soup. I'm like, I can't even imagine. Like I don't.
Well, that's a different thing, I think.
Well, I've never tried it, so I
never had
wouldn't
that.
know. I would not know.
No.
Because
The
I'm
soup
good.
gets green. That's a little different for
Okay.
me.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think. But
What about you, Craig?
My first thought was ice cream. I mean, I feel like I've talked about ice cream numerous times
Right.
at the beginning of this.
For your ordination?
So yeah, so maybe to try to change the subject a little bit, I thought of cereal as well. I recently discovered chocolate checks.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
And they're
my kids love it.
fantastic.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
great.
We go to
And
that quickly.
we bought it with the intention of like we'll mix cereal, like we'll give Elsie like regular Cheerios and they'll sprinkle in a little bit of like chocolate Cheerios, so then she's like more likely to eat it.
okay.
So then Cheerios,
Mm-hmm.
they stopped making what we would give her, the chocolate peanut butter stuff. So we were like, let's
The
try.
bribe. That's
Yeah.
called a
Yeah.
bribe.
Right.
Yeah.
So then we're like, she'll like this chocolate checks probably. Doesn't like it. Turns out I really like it,
Huh.
and I go through it pretty fast.
It does go. The checks.
Yeah.
Maeve was really big on Cheerios when we were early on, and then it was a splurge to do like Honey Nut,
Yeah.
and then it was like an extra thing to like we'll give you some kind of fun little not
It's a
free pebbles.
splurge to do honey nut.
Early on, it was like to have sugar in the cereal,
Oh,
and
okay.
so
I see.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
treat.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
It was not like financially,
Right.
but and now it's just slowly worn down to like, what do you want? We'll get
Yeah.
and it's like we have this Reese's peanut butter cup cereal,
Yep.
and it's so strong that the kids are like, oh, it's too much. Like it's just too sweet, too everything. So
Really?
they had oatmeal this morning on their own. They're just like, I'll just take that.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, what was your second
The
one?
second
though?
half of the question, I was curious about if you had any experience with this. So, right at the tail end of college for me, I was part of this campus ministry called Christian Challenge, and they would send numerous groups overseas to do mission work over the summers. And they had this week-long training before they sent the groups over. And it was like each day was kind of a simulation of the different cultures that they were going to be going to. I was on the worship team for this event, so I wasn't going and I didn't have to participate in all this stuff, but it was at a camp and the people working it would do their best to make it as authentic as possible. And they called it like the China Day. So everything was based around Chinese culture, and they would try to reenact as many things as they could. In Chinese culture, if you're offered something, you can't refuse it.
Right.
Like that is huge. And so we were eating lunch. We got to eat all the food, which was great. But then they started coming around with this plate full of century eggs. Do you know what these are?
Where it's half grown. There's two different kinds. I don't know if that's the one, but there's one where it's like soy sauce, soaked in soy sauce, and the other one where it's actually like a formed chicken.
Oh, not that one.
That's still okay.
This one is like, it sits in different things. Like soy sauce is one of them, but it's basically, it's
Fermented.
kind of like a spoiled
hard-boiled egg?
It gets like, no, it's not boiled.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just like, it gets kind of like gelled,
Oh.
and it's really dark and kind of like goopy.
Mm-hmm.
And so they set this in front of you.
Spoiled. We like
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so they set this in front of you. Immediately I can smell it. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I don't want that.
Yeah.
Right.
But they're trying to reenact
Yeah.
all of these cultures.
Uh-huh.
And so everyone's looking at me like, you going to eat that?
Yeah.
And so I just held my breath and just tried to shoot it down as
Uh-huh.
quick as I could.
Wow.
It was disgusting.
Did you
Yeah,
keep
because
it down?
I kept it down.
Okay.
But yeah, just the aftertaste
Yeah.
and like the texture,
Mm.
not good.
Yeah.
But I think in China it's like delicacy type thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if you ever ran across that when you,
Not that
when you were
egg.
in China.
And I think they told us that because we were at a school, we just served ourselves a lot, so I didn't come across.
okay.
But there was one time I was at a family's house, and they had a lot of tofu, just straight up and they would mix it with stuff. And one of the kids was like, "Try some," and he just puts it in front, and I have like the whole family.
Yeah.
I mean, and friends. There's probably 15 people there looking at the American, and I was like, and I did it, and I was like, there's some missionary prayer. It's like, Lord, I'll swallow it down if you keep it down. And so. And so I was like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I was like channeling my pee energy here. I was like, okay, I can just breathe. You're fine.
Yeah. That was probably one of the oddest things I've ever had to eat, for sure.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, I'm with you guys. I think of cereal and that sort of thing. My daughter Lacey called me this morning. I told you guys. She FaceTimed me. You guys are big time.
Okay. Shout out to Lacey Kaufman.
On the Oakview campus.
Oakview campus.
And all those at Oakview who are listening in.
Where they are listening to us so they won't be too distracted to do their homework.
Okay. It can't be too engaging.
Yes. We're just at the right level. They're not
just monotonous enough. Just monotonous enough.
Right.
Not too boring.
Right.
They're not thinking, oh, I need to participate and sing along. I need to engage with this too much. I can just let those old guys ramble.
Yeah.
In the background. But she FaceTimed me after workout with the softball team, and she said, this is my favorite time of day because I'm so hungry and I'm making breakfast. And she was making oatmeal, bowl of oatmeal. She said, I make the best oatmeal. I'm like, all right, I'm pretty sure you microwaved it like everybody else in the world, but whatever. And so she made this oatmeal, and she was putting cinnamon and honey and granola. She added granola to it.
Yeah.
All right. That's a different thing for me. I thought, all right. And then she put peanut butter in.
Okay.
And that's about where she lost me.
Now I'm out. Yeah.
I said,
I don't know about that.
why the peanut butter? And she said, well, you need protein.
Isn't oatmeal
I didn't.
Yeah. It's a grain.
There's
but it's
probably
not.
some protein. But not really.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I was kind of out at that point.
Let's talk more about this.
I don't know what you do with the peanut butter and the oatmeal, but she was enjoying it.
Well, good.
And having that. And so I think that's a way to go, Lacey. And thanks for spreading the word about small talk.
Yep.
Is
that what you would want? A bowl of anything right now?
Oatmeal?
Of Lacey's
negative.
Best
No,
in the world.
I don't want that. No.
Oh, okay.
I don't want that. No. I think, I made chili last night. I really enjoyed that. I had that in a bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'll eat most things out of a bowl, I think.
Yeah.
Ice cream, I'm with you.
Yeah. Just take your favorite food and just put it in a bowl.
Yeah. Cereal.
I don't know why we think of cereal.
Well, you think cereal. When I was a kid, we weren't allowed sugar, like you said, fruit pebbles.
Yeah.
What is it called?
Fruity Pebbles.
Fruity Pebbles.
Yeah.
Which my daughters made, Rice Krispie treats, except with fruity pebbles.
yeah.
And that's really pretty good.
Yeah.
Go for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just get a bowl of that.
Everything. You could do that with, any, chocolate checks, right? We'd put marshmallows on that. I bet that'd be delicious too.
Yeah.
Man, let's just go down this road.
What can't be wrong? So
has there been something that was was put in front of you that you wanted to refuse?
I've told this story before. The thing that comes to mind mostly is when I was a kid, we had goats and goat milk, and I did not like drinking the goat's milk,
Right.
and I'd leave that for long periods of time.
Yeah.
And I've said this before. My dad used to make this like bread with stewed tomatoes, and so it was just this mixture of stewed tomatoes, which are kind of, I'm not really into that either. The cooked tomatoes,
Yeah.
I'm like, that texture kind of gets me a little bit.
Yeah.
But then you add that with the bread that just becomes soggy and mushy, and so it's a whole textural thing that I'm not about. That grossed me out. I didn't really care for that, but no.
All right.
Lots of things I'd eat.
All right. Well, let's jump ahead. We are looking over the small group questions, and we are going to be looking at 8 and a little bit of 9. But it goes like this. This is from Revelation 16, 1 through 16, kind of that section. But as we're looking at the bowls, and like I said, compared to the trumpets and seals, what seems to be different about these bowls? From when we're looking at the other judgments from previous parts of Revelation. Lance talked about specifically the scorched with fire and being plunged into darkness, as representing hell, and kind of what are your thoughts on that? And also, if our eternity begins right now, is that true of those outside of Jesus as well? Right? If does their eternity begin as well right now, and what does that look like? And also, when we look at this as a whole, especially since this is the third installment of seeing these plagues, some people have a difficulty reading Revelation because it really points to the wrath of God, and we see this especially in chapter 16. How do we make sense of that when we talk about the wrath of God, and why is it hard sometimes to come to terms with that? Lance, what do you think?
Those are good questions.
Whoever wrote that.
Yeah. No, just hard questions. I mean,
Yeah.
not easy things to answer.
Right.
I think, and we probably are not going to do it in the next 20 minutes or so, but we'll talk about them certainly. The bowls, I think the major difference is between the bowls and the trumpets is just, and we talked on Sunday about that the judgment is complete. With the trumpets, you had a third of everything being destroyed or a third being affected, and then you get to the bowls, and it's all of the sea and
Right.
all of the living creatures in the sea, and so you get this fullness, this completeness of God's judgment. And the interesting part that I was thinking about since Sunday is this idea of, because I think we've talked about it from stage here at Wallula, in that your eternity begins right now, and we tend to talk about that obviously in relationship with Jesus, but in being a follower of Jesus, you begin to live that relationship out right now, and you begin to experience that life to the full that Jesus offers right now, and kind of the idea is you begin to experience that blessing. You receive the good things that God wants to be a part of your life, and you receive that blessing from relationship with Him, and it begins right now, and that's a good thing. But then if you think about, people marked by and we don't even need to use that language, I guess, just people who are living outside of Jesus right now. Has their eternity started? Is the opposite true? Is the other side of the coin true as well? And I think to a certain degree, yes. I mean, there's certainly, there's consequence to sin, and some of that we will just experience because we live in a broken world, and we experience the consequence of sin just because. Jesus hasn't returned, because we are living in that interim period before the new heaven and the new earth. Outside on this side of Eden, with Eden yet to come, kind of idea. And so some of that we'll just experience, but you think about sin and the consequences thereof; they are very real. Romans Chapter 5 talks about, sin leading to death, and then death coming to all people, right? We all experience that because of sin. Isaiah chapter 59 talks about being separated from God because of sin. We're separated from God. And sometimes I think we get to this point where we're thinking, okay, I've got this thing that I'm keeping for myself, the sin that exists in my life, but it's just my thing. It's not really harming anybody else. We think nobody else knows about this, and so there can't really be any consequences for that, right? And I read one author who said, the sin we think is harmless is killing us because it's separating us from God. It's still leading us away from Him. And so sin is always harmful to yourself. It's harmful for the person involved. It's quite often harmful for others. It's doing that same kind of sometimes quiet destruction of our relationship with God that sin is causing. Very well could be causing the same kind of quiet destruction in our other relationships. We're not smart enough, alert enough. We're not paying enough attention to realize the destruction that it's causing, but it's quite often at work doing those things. It's the catalyst for more sin in our life. I've used this example. If you think back to the first date you ever went on with a girl, and you thought, oh, I want to hold her hand. Maybe that wasn't the first date.
It was the fourth.
Yeah, there you go. It was the fourth date.
I'm teasing. I was trying to make this sound more sad.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I mean, some of us are just slower workers than others, Zach. That whole, what was it? Bachelor to the Rapture. Bachelor to the Rapture.
That's
award.
right.
Yeah.
I was picking up on the signs.
Yeah. But once you hold somebody's hand, then that second date, it's a lot. You hold their hand again, right? There's no issue with that anymore,
right?
And so that works with positive things, I suppose. But sin works the same way, it leads us into deeper and more sin in our life, and ultimately it leads to that eternal separation from God, and so. Ultimately, that's the real consequence and price for sin. But I think that eternity can begin now. There's certainly consequences to sin right now. Sometimes we talk about that almost like it's a future price to be paid, like a credit card or something. We're gonna enjoy it right now and pay for it later, but. I suppose credit card debt works like this too. You really have a price to be paid in the now as well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I heard someone say that we're created to live forever, right? And so like right now you are living forever. It's just that your physical body will stop at some point, but you will continue to go, and so you are immortal. Like the idea that you just keep going, and so no matter. With God or without God, you're going to keep going on. And it can be very humbling, especially when you think of it that way. But when I was looking at, question number 8, what's different about the bowls, looking back through them, like you had already said, the trumpets were about a third of the earth, the seals were about a quarter of the earth, and the bowls was the whole one. But one of the other things I had found is that the first two affected people indirectly. Like there's a war, wars or famine, and it was things going on. And this one is very directly, the boils on the body, or them being scorched from fire, in the fourth bowl. And so very, like you said, a lot more direct of what's happening to the people on the earth at this point. And when you look at the imagery of the scorched with fire and darkness, you get the imagery of what we hear about with hell and kind of the description. And so there's talks of, well, is that exactly what it's going to be? Is that what hell's going to be like, or is this just kind of describing? And an author I read about this is said, we're not meant to know. Like it doesn't say if this is exact, or this is so, since it's not saying, we're not meant to know the exact way that hell is going to be. However, we are supposed to think about the literal image behind this metaphor, right? And so when we think of it that way, of just what is it trying to communicate? We have this horrifying power behind the picture of like whatever it's going to be. The communication it's not good, for a lot of different reasons. And so it's easy to read into the specifics of it. But whatever it is, ultimately wanting to, we want to be with God, and not because it's going to be bad after, but like you said, here on earth. I tell the students all the time, like one of the worst things that can happen to you is that you get away with sin. Yeah. Like you hide a sin and you just get good at it. And then you get good at hiding other sin. And then, the worst thing that happen is like you grow old and die never having gotten away with covering up your sin the whole time, because all you're going to do is just keep getting better at covering sin. And then your whole life becomes just juggling this, how do I keep people away enough so that they don't know what's going on? And one of the best things that can happen is that we, although painful, confess our sins, and maybe even get caught. And then, but because it's keeping us not only from each other, but like you said, from God too. And so many people treat salvation like, I just want to get to heaven. So I'm, get baptized and that's it. And then once I die, I'm good. But it's also for right here on earth. Like it gives us this better life. And that's not the main reason, like practically I want to be saved so I can have a better life. But the idea of love and joy and peace and patience and connection with God and being led by the Spirit, that comes from having a relationship, and sin just blurs that line. When I was thinking about all of 16 and just looking at how intense this wrath is, as we look at the bowls, it's not kind of just, there'll be wars, but like, boils on your body and things like that. And it gets, we were talking about, this is kind of leaning into number 9, but the wrath of God. And I think one of the ways I don't feel like I need to reconcile. I feel, I feel like it's been up front the whole time. God is trying to redeem his people, to bring them back to him. And so I think it's just it's like when someone says, oh, you're just following someone who's trying to scare you into being saved. I'm like, I think we're just looking at it two different ways, because if you understand the context of what's going on, I mean, he sends his son Jesus, right, to die for us. Like, what do you want him to do? He's making it, as when you look at what it takes to be saved in other religions, and it's like within Islam, all the 5 pillars, and you have to do this and have to do this, and God's like, I've done it all, and all of you, anybody, all you have to do is accept my son and follow him. And it's like, he's doing everything he can. And so when I look at this, it's just, these are the judgments. These judgments are God's response to those who have, killed the saints, who have gone against him. And even during it, we keep seeing over and over again, they refuse to repent. Like, even during this, he'll still give them the chance to repent if they want. And and here it's saying that they won't. But even during all of this, God is still extending this, grace. And so, we come to this question of like, why doesn't God do something about evil? And it's like, well, here he is. And then people are like, well, not like that. I didn't mean this is, and it's like, well, what do you want God to do something about evil? And, but I want it to be done. They want it to be done their way. And it's like, God will do something about it because he is just. And it's not our place to say, well, that's to nitpick how God will do this, Anyway, and so I think having a full view of who God is and seeing him move through Scripture, I think it's painfully obvious that he is not just some wrathful God, but one who loves us and will also be just in. And I'm trying to think of the words I'm trying to say, but like especially early on in Revelation, when the saints are crying out, like, "When will you avenge?"
Yeah.
And so you see that his justice is coming out here, and so I think it totally makes sense, and it doesn't contradict anything. Yeah, Craig, what about you?
Yeah, I'll kind of just go off of what you were just talking about, because I was thinking more so about question 9 and God's wrath and why that is hard to, like the question says, come to terms with. And you really have to look at it as God is loving, but he also will exercise his wrath. Like it's hard to just take one and not without the other. I read an illustration that I'll sum it up really quickly, but the illustration was basically, think about like this isolated community, and these people live and do their thing, and every like once a month or something, a judge comes, or an officer, and the point is he's making sure that things are happening as they should, and he cares for these people. And so during that time when he's not there, like the illustration says, like people are robbed of their possessions, and landlords kick out tenants and raise the prices because they don't care about the people and all these things. So then when the judge comes during that one day out of the month, the people are expecting him to do something. But if he shows up and sees all this stuff that happened and then he just leaves, then you're thinking, well, he doesn't care about us. He doesn't love us. And also he doesn't care about justice either. And so there's this balance between the two things. And I think that's really, we have to look at these things in Revelation in that same way. And I think that's part of the question is, why is it hard to come to terms with God's wrath? And it's something too, like I was thinking about it, we don't talk about that maybe as much as we should sometimes. We want to, like as the church, we want to talk about God's love. Because that's first and foremost when you think about Jesus going to the cross and the resurrection, like he did that out of his love for us and wanting us to be in eternity with him. And so there's that piece of it. But this whole thing through Revelation, in this book that I have sitting next to me, talked about it. And it was a little bit kind of what we talked about last week, being in union with things. Throughout Revelation, we see all these happenings of God exercising judgment or wrath. And like you said, there's opportunities to repent in all of those things. But people continually decide to be in relationship with evil and worship idols or whatever it may be. And God is giving all of these opportunities. Like you said, like he sent Jesus and he went to the cross and he died for us. And it's kind of like, look what I'm doing. I've done it all and I've conquered death. And it comes to a point when it's like when someone has pledged allegiance to something else and directly turned away from God, and Lance said, like, you're living in that relationship. And so, like, that's what God is. He's going to come and exercise justice because he loves us and wants to bring us into eternity. And so it is hard to come to terms with it. And because, we always focus and talk about the love of God. And that is true and it's a fact, but it's the relationship between the two, I think.
Well, and not even like after Jesus dies and is resurrected, then he calls on his followers to go into all the world, right? And we see this throughout history now, even to the point of death. And he's calling us to do this, right? To still reach the lost. And then you have the lost still complaining to God about, like right now, like about how could God do this? And it's like, man, you have to see the bigger picture here of like,
So much of our ability to offer second chances to people is based on our own failures, right? I mean, I think about when my kids in college and they say, "Oh, I've got this paper to write, and now I've got to finish it, and I've got to spend all night writing this paper," and the parent in me wants to say, well, when did you find out about this paper? Right?
Yeah.
But I very rarely get that out because I'm thinking I would have been worse.
Yes.
When I was in college, I just remember those.
Yes.
Oh, I waited till the last minute and I've got to do this paper and I'm going to do this. And so, our grace tends to flow from our own our own mistakes and realizing that, okay, I'm not perfect either. We don't always get that right. We draw weird lines when we go the other way and we offer our own judgment that's misguided, but that's not God. He is perfect. He's without fault. And so I think that's the most difficult thing to come to terms with, is not so much that God would judge. I understand that, right? When somebody wrongs you, you understand wanting, however you say that, justice, vengeance, whatever you want to say, right? We understand that. But a God who is perfect, without fault, absolutely holy. That's the part where, okay, I don't have any experience to draw on
Yeah.
from there, and so, how do we come to terms with that? And if we could, then the wrath of God, I think, would not be hard to understand. It's only in kind of our own sin that we can't figure out. We want God to just forgive and forgive and forgive. I think because we realize, man, I need that forgiveness so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that makes any sense.
No, for sure. Well, going on to our last question, number 13. What encouragements would the description of the beast, the lamb, the 144,000, the message of the angels, the bowls of wrath, and all this stuff provide the readers of Revelation? So the people who were reading this at the time, that John wrote it, John's audience, when they're reading all this stuff, beast, lamb, 144,000, all these things, what encouragement would they get as they're going through this? Like, what's their sort of response to that? And also, like, today, what encouragements would we get from reading this? Because it gets dark, right? It gets, and so, what do you think, Craig?
Yeah, you think of the context that they were in, this original audience that John was writing to, the 7 churches, and we've talked about it a lot before, the pressures of their culture and society with government rule and how that really affected their daily life, and it affected their decisions and in so many just how they lived day to day, and the pressures of government and how they were ruling over them, the persecution that happened, that would have been a big I don't know what word I'm looking for, but like you see that as they read Revelation, and that's the beast, that's evil, and really the message that they get from Revelation when they look at Rome or Babylon or whatever, those government rules, is like they're not going to win. That's the huge message for them, and for them that's an encouragement, and you see John encouraged them over and over, be faithful unto death, because God's going to do the work. God has already defeated death through Jesus. The slain lamb is in the center of the throne room, and we're all going to be gathered there. So you don't need to take vengeance today. You don't need to try to act upon your own justice, all of those sorts of things. And so that's, to me, one of the biggest things that I've gleaned from Revelation. Because it's funny, because going into it, we talked a little bit in staff meeting today, you say Revelation, and you start thinking end times, and all of the views and interpretations that go into it, and all of the minute details, and that was where my mind first went when I found out we were going to study Revelation as a church, and I haven't spent very much time thinking about that stuff so far, because this is what I've been focused on, is this principle that carries into modern day Christianity is we have a decision, and we have really a command and encouragement that's the same, to follow Jesus and remain faithful to him, to make that decision every single day, to be in a relationship with him and to follow him. Right. Because it's the same message that the day has already been won by God, by Jesus. And so there's no reason for us to really like fear evil, that it's going to conquer us, because it's already been conquered. And that's what we see here. And so that's really what I've been holding on to, is those encouragements, and really trying to apply it and direct my days.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, come to think of it, I hadn't even thought about that too, but the talking about, we're in the book that speaks on end times, and I don't really think much of it. Like it's not like it's opened my eyes to, I see it more happening. It's more about what's going on. And it's funny because, like, who God is.
Like a while ago, I met someone for the first time, and it was around when the war in Ukraine started, and he told me he opened up Revelation,
Right.
Because something like that happens, and then they think
Mm-hmm.
there must be some sort of explanation
Right.
somewhere in Revelation, and it's like,
Which to me is weird because it's not like that's the only war that's been happening.
right?
There's
Yeah,
been
yeah,
so many wars.
Right.
You know,
Mhm.
to be like, this is the one that's probably Revelation's talking about.
But yeah,
Uh,
Yeah.
anyway, what about you, Lance?
Well, you said earlier today that somebody had
Yeah, September-
predicted September 25th.
September, yeah. Shout out to Vance Russell. He teaches Revelation at Boise Bible College, and he had posted on Facebook about, someone he
Right.
showed the picture on their cars at September 22nd, 2022, like the end. I don't know what it said after that, but end times, whatever. I could bring it up, but but apparently there's at least a small group. I never heard it in the news or anything, so it must have been a small group. But yeah, someone had predicted. So I should have
Just
looked
to
it
be
up.
clear, what's today?
The
the
20
27th.
The
20
27th.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe it was the 25th. Anyway,
Yeah. I
it
think
was
he said
yesterday.
25th earlier.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And so, but here we are.
But the point is,
Yes.
yeah,
We're still here.
yeah,
we're
still here.
We're
The
still
record
here,
for everyone who's ever
Yeah.
picked the end of the world is they're 0 for however many that
Yeah.
is.
It's almost like Jesus warned about.
What does the Bible say
You're
about
gonna
it?
make
Don't
it.
guess.
You're not gonna get it
You're
right.
not gonna know.
Yeah. Truly, I understand. I think a little bit. I mean, I don't understand trying to figure out the exact date or anything like that. But I get the hope that maybe, tries to stimulate in people.
Yeah.
Because there is hope in the end of Revelation, that there is this new heaven and this new earth and glorified bodies. And so there's absolutely hope in that. And that I think is ongoing. I just think if you think about, your your loved one who's passed on and they're in the presence of Jesus right now, and they're still hoping for that, right? They're still hoping for the new heaven and the new earth and this and so that hope is continuing, and we ought to hold on to that. But there is even more in our just day-to-day life that if our eternity begins now, and that's true of when we walk away from Jesus, it's true when we walk with him, and when we are marked by him, when we are sealed by him, that life to the full begins, that we can leave behind kind of the guilt and the the hurt that sin has, the hold that it has on us. We leave that behind, and man, there's great hope in walking with him right now. And so I'm with you guys. That's what I've kind of grabbed hold of, is this idea that we are, a couple things, that we're marked by him, that we're sealed by him, so we are protected in so many ways by him, right? That there are consequences to sin, and sometimes believers get caught up in that, and so we go through persecution maybe, or just a trial of some kind, or a tribulation of some kind, a diagnosis that we weren't expecting, or whatever it is, right? I mean, we're dealing with some kind of physical ailment, or all kinds of things that sin. We live in a broken world, and so we have to struggle through that. But we're protected in other ways. That we have hope in the midst of that. I just it always. Sometimes I just wonder. This world we live in with social media, you have these connections to people from your past maybe that you otherwise wouldn't have, right?
Yeah.
That, you just weren't, you were classmates or coworkers at one point, and then you move or they move, and you just wouldn't have a relationship outside of social media. And you see something go on in their life, and you're like, oh man, no. And I just sometimes wonder, how do you navigate that without Jesus? How do you keep how do you take one more step? How do you take that small step? And it is just so much easier with the hope we have in Christ. And it doesn't make everything okay.
Right.
It doesn't make that, no problem, right? But it does offer us this hope and this solution, this foundation that we have to lean on. And so I think that's, I think that's what they would have heard. Those 7 churches in Asia Minor that are just in the heart of emperor worship, this false religion and government all kind of tied up into one, and they are just in the thick of it, in the middle of it, and having to stand up to that, and knowing that that those folks who are making your life so difficult, that they don't win, that the scoreboard someday won't lie,
Right.
and that that their end is coming, would have encouraged them, I think, to know that they have a home with Jesus, would encourage them, and it ought to encourage us. It ought to have the same effect in our lives.
Yeah, for sure. Like Craig said, I wasn't. I keep forgetting. Oh yeah, there's end time stuff here too. I know it's talking about it, but as I've read through this, I just see more of who God is and His plan. So when I was looking at the encouragements, both back then and for us, you guys have good answers. I just wrote down what encouragements have I gotten from this, so today's audience. And then as I wrote it, I'm like, I feel like this would be the same encouragements from back then, which before I say it, I think that's one of the why Revelation is so special, is because it speaks to any situation throughout history, because people are always going through difficult times, governments that are oppressive. We live in death, and yet hope still speaks to every generation of every people group, that there's more, that this is not all there is. And so some of the encouragements that I got is that there is a plan, that we know how it ends, that we see this, even if it's not exactly right. There's a lot of symbolism there, but for sure there's a plan, that God is in control and that He wins, that there's nothing surprising, that we know who the enemy is. Sometimes it's hard, I get that Satan's bigger and stronger and wiser than me, but I still know who he is through Scripture, and also that God is more powerful than him.
Right.
That even though the enemy is stronger than me, he's not stronger than God who is in me. That death is not the end, talking about the hope that we have. That there is a place for those who are faithful. That God is both loving and just, and we see that over and over again played out in Revelation. That God will do something about the evil in the world. Another one that's kind of subtle, but is that we know there's pain. We know that there's pain in this world, but that it won't always be that way. And so I know it's weird, but I'm kind of comforted by the fact that I'm not promised that this should be good, that it all will be fine. That over and over, the people who are faithful to God, we see them struggled, persecuted, killed, and all throughout human history, we see, not human history, but since Jesus, we see those who have followed Christ, and it was not an easy life. And so I shouldn't be surprised if things like that happen, or if life gets difficult because of my faith. And I can I trust in that, and I'm okay with that, because I realize I'm joining with all the other saints who have joined with me before, either big or small struggles. Struggles? Did I say that right? Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I thought I said smuggles. I don't know why. I was so close to finishing well here. All right. The last two was we could trust in Jesus, not only for what He did on the cross, but also for our salvation. And then the last one was Satan isn't as powerful as we imagine, and he's easily defeated. God allows the beast, the dragon, the second beast, right, to, as we see in 16, rise up to put together an army, right, for this Armageddon. And And he allows all this to happen. He allows evil to happen. He allows them to bring us together. And this quote I saw, I thought it was really good. It says, evil participates in its own destruction. He's allowing it to happen right up until he's going to defeat it all. He's like, yeah, sure, bring them all to me. Like, let's get everyone together here. And so just because we see evil moving or happening, ultimately God's like, it leads to its own destruction when faced before God. And so, I think all of those images and ideas not only encourage me, but also I would imagine the readers in the first century too. So, it's really good stuff. It's crazy. We're getting closer to the end here.
Yeah.
So we have, you're doing 17 and 18 again. And then after that, we're just one chapter until the end. Close?
This series will be 17 and 18 on Sunday, and then next couple weeks, 19 and 20. So 20 is a very difficult chapter. Stay tuned. That'll be a good one.
Yeah.
But then you get 21.
Right.
You get settle in for a few weeks and talk about
on the last chapter.
new heaven and new earth. So
Very cool. Very cool. I'm excited about seeing how this goes.
Yep.
Well, I've appreciated not only talking with you guys this week, but really this whole series. I've gotten so much out of it, and I think going through these discussions has been beneficial for my own faith, and so look forward to talking to you guys next week.
Yeah.
And we'll see you later.
Awesome.